So I don't plan on showing my face, and I am going to just preemptively apologize. I am sick, I've got the sniffles, I'm not feeling good, so I sound pretty terrible right now. Okay? Basically, I just saw a video on YouTube, and unfortunately I don't know the creator's name, and I'm not trying to be a hater, I'm just trying to, put out a different perspective. Basically, this person was making dice and was making, they had their short as them painting their dice, adding the numbers and stuff, and just putting on there, when people come up to you and they ask if you actually know what you're, hold on. I forget the correct wording, and I do apologize, but it was something along the lines of when they come up to you and they're like, hey, did you forget a step? Because I don't see any numbers on there. And, the artist was responding in a bit of a snarky way and I understand. Let me just say this. Sorry. In my train of thought here. I understand that people are going to respond to silly questions in multiple different ways. You can respond to it in a bit of a rude way, in a bit of a snarky way, in a bit of a funny way. You can do, it will really show your personality or where your headspace is at that moment when you make that response. But the way that the person responded on the video was just it just felt a bit rude, because they were like, I'm not done, but duh. And obviously they probably meant it in a situation where somebody who had no knowledge of what they were actually doing, had come up to them and was like, you're doing that wrong. Fix it. That is the situation, But in my mind, when I think of situations like that, mentally, what I would want to do is I would actually want to address it in probably a more positive way, because it's harder for people to get mad, or I say that it's harder to create a negative association with, how do I word this? It is so if you go to somebody, let me just make an example. Okay, you go to somebody and they're doing something, like say they're making soap, and you're like, oh, did you forget to add the scent to that soap? And they respond with, no, I just haven't gotten there yet. With a lot of attitude, with, probably a facial expression to match, and it just kind of leaves you feeling not good. You feel dejected, you feel, like you're a fool, you feel just not very good, okay? And so you're going to think of other people who make soap as, unapproachable, not very inviting. You're not going to feel like you are welcome in that area of anything, whether it be like YouTube or TikTok, or in person. You see a soap maker in person and they give you attitude, you're gonna associate that attitude with the other people that work in that field, that do that. But if you were going to, in a different, let's say we take it a different way. Okay, you go up to that soap maker and you're like, hey, did you forget to add the scent to that soap? Ugh, excuse me, you guys. And they say, oh, well, I haven't forgotten, I just haven't got to that part in my process yet. Because obviously you can see that they're probably not done with what they're doing, but, you know, you just say, hey, I haven't gotten to that part of my process yet. Would you like to know kind of how I get to that point? Or, and you don't have to educate people on how to do what you're doing, but it opens a door for a conversation. And I understand, not everybody wants to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't really know how things are done. But how do we expect people to learn, or how do we expect people to support people who do these things if we're not going to be open to them, Personally, I don't make soap, so it's kind of hard for me to give like a proper example, and I do apologize. That's just something that popped in my mind. But I do crochet. I will not say that I'm like great at it, because I am definitely not. I'm definitely still learning. I've only been doing it for like a year now. I've still got a lot of things to learn, and a lot of growth that I could do. Okay, but one of the things that I do is I like to make hats. I like to work on my little scrap blankets. Again, excuse me, I'm sick. But like, if somebody were to come up to me while I'm crocheting and say I'm working on a hat, and they're like, hey, that doesn't look like a hat. Like, how do you make it look like a hat? Personally, the way that I make a hat is I like to make basically a tube, and then I just sew it closed on one end, and then I put in like my finishing touches, or I'm gonna say accents, but it's like if you want to add any buttons, or if you want to add the little fuzzball thing on top, like whatever, whatever. Okay, if somebody were to come up to me when I'm just starting the process and I've gotten a little bit of the tube done, and they're like, hey, did you forget to start the hat on a closed top? I would just say, hey, part of my process, I'm actually just starting to make this hat. I haven't actually gotten to that part yet, but what I'll do is I'll make this section a bit longer, and then I'll actually sew it closed and then flip it inside out, and that'll have like the actual structure of a hat, without a lot of like added stress for me. Because, and maybe I will go into detail, maybe I won't, but I'll just kind of explain it to them, and, they can go on their way, or they can ask extra questions, whatever. But, just it's just like a personal thing. Like, I understand, like, sometimes maybe I'll be in a bit of a mood, and I'll be like, no, this is how I do my hats. I will make the length, and then I'll close it up on the top. And, maybe I just stop there. Maybe I don't explain that it looks funky for me if I start on the top with it closed, instead of, like, just sewing it closed after I've built the length of the hat. But it doesn't take very much to just be like, hey, this is the process, this is what I do, and this is why I do it, and I appreciate you asking me a question. Like, you don't have to, you don't even have to do all of that. You just, my point is that we should be choosing kindness. We should be choosing to be nice to others instead of approaching them in kind of a hateful way to tell them that they're doing things wrong, even though we don't know what we're talking about, or, responding in a hateful way. Something that I kind of live by is that hate equals more hate. But if you add a little bit of love, maybe it'll take some of that hate away. Maybe it'll ease it up. You never know. And I know that this is like cliche and probably oversaid, whatever. Say it as many times as you need to. I need to remind myself of this sometimes too. Because you never know what somebody else's day has looked like thus far. You never know if something that you say is going to, really upset them or not. And if it's up to me, I'm going to choose to not upset somebody further if I can. And I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that I never make mistakes. I'm not saying that I have never said anything mean. I'm not saying that because that's not true. I'm not a perfect human being. I'm not a perfect person. I'm not always the nicest person. And, it's not something that I'm proud of, but it is something that is me. That is who I am and who I've been, and I am trying to make myself see things better, because for a very long time I told myself that all of these positive, nice people were disgusting because I thought it was super cringy and super annoying. But I understand it better now. It is better to be nice and cringy than it is to be mean and hurt somebody. Anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Yeah, sorry.